Nobody on Clement Street set an alarm that morning. They woke up anyway, one by one, the way people wake up when something is happening outside that their sleeping mind registers before their conscious one does a sound that doesn't belong, a frequency that the neighborhood doesn't make, a wrongness in the texture of an ordinary Tuesday that pulls people from their beds and toward their windows before they can name why. By 6:15, there were 7 people on their porches. By 6:30, there were 14. By 6:45, when the last truck rolled into position, and the engines cut, and the sudden silence was somehow louder than the sound had been, the entire block was outside. 50 trucks. Identical, white, clean. No logo on the side, not yet. The logos were covered, deliberately, with magnetic panels, which nobody on Clement Street would understand until later. 50 trucks, parked in a formation that began at the corner of Clement and Marsh, and extended the full length of the block, and curved around onto the cross street, precise, deliberate, like something planned by someone who had thought about it for a long time. Engines off. Nobody getting out, just sitting there in the early October morning in Dayton, Ohio, in the specific blue-gray light of a dawn that hasn't decided yet whether it wants to be beautiful. Margaret Osai, who had lived at 412 Clement for 22 years and considered herself the institutional memory of the block, stood on her porch in her housecoat and looked at the trucks, and then at her neighbor Dave, and then back at the trucks. "Whose are they?" Dave said. "I don't know," Margaret said. "What do they want?" Margaret looked at the trucks. Then she looked at the house at the center of the block, the one the trucks seemed, in their arrangement, to be oriented toward the way compass needles orient toward north. The small blue house with the porch light still on from the night before, and the old pickup in the driveway, and the flower boxes under the windows that had been tended carefully for years but were looking, this autumn, like someone had stopped having the energy to tend them. "I think," Margaret said slowly, "they're here for Walter." Dave looked at the house. "Why?" he said. Margaret watched the trucks. "I don't know yet," she said, but she had a feeling, the feeling of a woman who has known a good man for 22 years and has watched the last 14 months quietly worry about him, that whatever was about to happen on Clement Street on this Tuesday morning in October had been a long time coming, a very long time. 20 years, to be exact. Walter Briggs had known about the foreclosure for 6 weeks. He had not told Rosa. He had tried twice, had sat down at the kitchen table with the letter in his hand and looked at his daughter across the breakfast things, and opened his mouth and found that the words were not available. Not because he was a man who struggled with words. Walter Briggs was, in most respects, a man who said what needed saying. He had raised Rosa alone for 16 years, with the specific combination of honesty and gentleness that single parents develop when they understand that they are the only source of both, and that their child needs both, and that the balance between them requires constant, conscious calibration. He could talk to Rosa about anything. Except this. This was different. This was the house. Rosa had grown up in this house. She had learned to walk in the hallway. She had learned to ride a bike in the driveway, an event that had taken 3 weekends and produced a scar on her left knee that she still had at 22. Her height was still marked in pencil on the doorframe of the kitchen, starting at 3'2" when Walter had started marking it and ending at 5'6". The last mark made on her 18th birthday, when she had said, laughing, that she didn't think she was going to grow much more, and Walter had said, also laughing, that was fine because he was running out of doorframe. Diane had died in this house. In the back bedroom, in February, 14 months after the diagnosis, with Walter holding one hand, and Rosa, who was 6, who was too young, who was exactly the right age to understand that her mother was going, though not yet to understand what going meant holding the other. He could not tell Rosa about the foreclosure, because the foreclosure was not about money. It was about Diane. It was about the specific cruelty of losing the house that Diane had picked out, that she had painted the kitchen of in a yellow she'd spent 3 weekends choosing, that she had planted the flower boxes for the flower boxes that Walter had maintained for 14 years, with a faithfulness that was not really about flowers but about the woman who had put them there. He could not do it. So, he had not told her. He had been working on it alone the way he worked on everything, methodically, without complaint, finding the distance between the problem and the solution, and walking it. He had called the bank. He had called a housing counselor. He had done the math 17 different ways, looking for the arrangement that worked. He had picked up extra work 2 jobs some weeks, 3, quietly, without telling Rosa, who was in her 2nd year of nursing school and had enough to carry. The math did not work. Not with what he had. Not with what he could generate in the time available. 11 days. That was the number on the most recent letter, which was in the kitchen drawer under the takeout menus, which was where Walter had put it, because putting it somewhere hidden felt like denial, and putting it somewhere visible felt like surrender, and the drawer under the takeout menus was a compromise that satisfied neither impulse, but at least kept it from being the first thing he saw every morning. 11 days. He was sitting at the kitchen table with his coffee at 5:45 on that Tuesday morning before the trucks, before everything, doing the math one more time. Because he was a man who believed that if you kept looking at a problem honestly, it would eventually show you something it hadn't shown you before. The math showed him nothing new. He closed the notebook. He drank his coffee. He looked at the flower boxes through the window. October, past their best, the petunias gone brown at the edges but still holding on in the way of things that are not quite ready to stop. He thought about Diane. He thought, I'm sorry, I'm trying. He did not hear the first truck arrive, because the coffee was hot, and his thoughts were loud, and the truck came slowly, at the speed of something that is trying not to announce itself before it's ready. He heard the second one. He heard the third and the fourth simultaneously, and by then the sound was not one truck, but a texture, a presence, and Walter Briggs set down his coffee and went to the window and stood very still. Rosa found out 3 days earlier. Not from Walter, he still hadn't told her. She had found out the way children find out things their parents are trying to protect them from, which is the most reliable method available, by accident, completely, at the worst possible moment. She had been looking for the takeout menu for the Chinese place on 5th, the one that did the dumplings Walter liked, the one she ordered when she wanted to do something nice for him without making it a whole thing, and she had found the letter. She had read it standing in the kitchen at 7:30 on a Saturday evening with her coat still on. She had put it back exactly as she found it. She had ordered the dumplings. She had sat across from her father at the kitchen table and watched him eat, and tried to find, in his face, the thing that knew the weight she now knew was there, that he had been carrying for 6 weeks, that he had carried through every dinner and every phone call and every morning she'd stopped by between classes, and he'd made her coffee and asked about her week. She found it. She saw it now that she knew to look the specific quality of tiredness in him that wasn't physical. The way he smiled with everything above his cheekbones, doing slightly less than everything below. The almost imperceptible pause before he answered certain questions. The pause of a man translating his actual thoughts into the version he'd decided to give. She had known her father for 22 years. She had looked at him across those dumplings and understood, completely, that he was not going to tell her, that he had decided to carry this until it was over, one way or another, that he was going to let them lose the house before he would ask his daughter, his 22-year-old nursing student daughter, with her student loans and her part-time hospital shifts and her whole life still assembling itself, for help. Rosa had gone home that night and cried for an hour. Not from fear, from the specific grief of loving someone whose greatest strength and greatest flaw are the same thing. She had called 3 people. None of them had answers. She had looked at her own accounts. She knew what was there. She had thought about the nursing school loan. She had done math that also did not work. And then she had sat at her own kitchen table, in her own small apartment, and done the only thing left to do. She had prayed. She was not, in general, a woman who prayed with any structure or regularity. But on that Saturday night she had folded her hands on the table, the way her father had taught her when she was small, not the formal way, not the church way, just the personal way. The way of talking to something larger than yourself when you have run out of smaller options. And she had said, plainly, into the quiet of her apartment, "Please, not the house. Please, not the house." She had not expected an answer by Tuesday. She had not expected 50 trucks. The winter Walter was 26, was the coldest in Dayton in a decade. Not the poetic kind of cold, not the clean, beautiful cold of winter landscapes and frosted windows and hot chocolate by a fire. The mean kind. The kind that gets into buildings that weren't built well enough, and into coats that aren't thick enough, and into the spaces between things where people end up when the structures that were supposed to hold them have failed. Walter was not supposed to be driving home at midnight. He was supposed to be in bed, early shift at the plant started at 5, and he was already running on the wrong side of enough sleep, but he had stayed late at his brother's, because his brother's furnace had gone out, and Walter had spent 4 hours coaxing it back to life, because that was the kind of man Walter was at 26. The kind who stayed when furnaces died, and nobody else was there to fix them. He was driving home on Grierson Avenue when he saw her. She was in the doorway of a closed laundromat, and he would not have seen her at all if his headlights hadn't caught the particular color of her jacket, bright red, a child's jacket, the kind of bright that is chosen by parents for visibility, which made it a painful object to see in that doorway at that hour, in that cold. He stopped. She was 16. He would find this out later. In the first 30 seconds she looked much younger, and then she looked much older, and the accurate number turned out to be somewhere that those two impressions bracketed. Her name was Naomi. She did not tell him this immediately. She told him to leave her alone, which he understood and did not take personally. She told him she was fine, which he did not believe, but also did not argue with. She told him she didn't need anything, which was the least true thing she said, and which she may have believed. Because people who have been on their own long enough sometimes stop being able to feel the space between not needing and having given up on asking. Walter did not argue. He went back to his car. He sat there for 30 seconds. He took off his coat, a good one, a winter coat he'd bought 2 years earlier, that was warm in the way that coats are warm when someone chose them carefully for that purpose, and he went back. He put it around her shoulders. He didn't say anything. She looked at him. He looked back. He went to his car and got the $20 from his wallet, all of it, the only cash he had until Thursday, and he brought that too. He also brought the list. He kept it in the glove compartment, a folded piece of paper, handwritten, that he had made 3 years earlier during a period he didn't talk about, a period when he had been the person in the doorway, or close enough to it that the distance was a matter of degree rather than kind. He had been 23, between jobs, between situations, between the version of his life that had failed and the one that hadn't assembled yet. Someone had helped him, had given him a list, resources, shelters, phone numbers, organized by urgency, and that list had been the thing, not the money, not the shelter itself. The list, which meant someone had thought about this, had cared enough to organize it, had believed that the information was worth writing down and carrying. He had made his own list when he got back on his feet. He kept it in the glove compartment because that was where you kept something you might need to give away at midnight on a cold street. He gave it to Naomi. He said, "The Grierson shelter is 4 blocks that way. They take walk-ins until 1 a.m. Call 211 tomorrow morning. It's on the list. They can help with next steps." He paused. I'll drive you if you want. I'm going that direction anyway. He was not going that direction. She looked at him for a long time. Then she got in the car. He drove her to the shelter. He waited in the parking lot until he saw the door open and someone come out to receive her. He watched her turn, once, at the door, and look back at his car, not waving, not smiling, just looking. The way you look at something you want to remember. He drove home. He was late to the plant the next morning because he'd missed the alarm the 4 hours at his brother's, and the midnight drive had finally collected their debt, and his supervisor gave him a formal warning that went in his file, which stayed in his file for 2 years, which cost him a promotion. Walter never considered this a cost. He had, genuinely, never thought about it that way. It had been cold. There had been a girl in a doorway. He had done what the situation required. He had gone home and gone to sleep, and the next morning had gotten up and gone to work, and the memory had settled into the part of him where things go, when they are complete, not forgotten, just finished, the way a good day's work is finished, without needing to be revisited or celebrated. He did not know that the girl in the doorway had kept the list. He did not know that she had laminated it. He did not know that she had built 50 companies. He did not know any of it. 20 years is a long time, and Walter Briggs had lived all of it facing forward. He was still at the window when his phone rang. Rosa. Dad. Her voice had the texture of someone who has been awake for a while and has been deciding something. Look out your front window. I'm already looking, Walter said. I know. I'm 3 cars back on Marsh. I can see your porch light. Walter turned. He could see, through the side window, a car stopped at the corner with its hazards on. Rosa, what is I didn't do this, she said. I want you to know that. I didn't call anyone or arrange anything. I found out when Margaret texted me at 6:15. A pause. But Dad, I need to tell you something, before whoever this is gets out of those trucks. Walter waited. I found the letter, Rosa said. 3 days ago. In the drawer. The silence lasted 4 seconds. Rosa, don't, she said, not harshly, with the specific firmness of someone who has been preparing a sentence for 3 days. Don't explain it. Don't tell me you were handling it. I know you were handling it. That's not the point. Her voice moved through something. The point is, I've been carrying it alone for 3 days. And I was so scared, Dad. I was so scared, and I didn't know what to do. And she stopped. Walter put his hand on the glass of the window. I know, he said quietly. I'm sorry. I prayed, Rosa said. Saturday night. I know that it doesn't sound like anything, Walter said. It sounds right. A long pause. Dad, Rosa said. Someone's getting out of the first truck. The woman who stepped out of the lead truck was 42 years old. She was not tall, but she occupied space in the way that people do, when they are fully, entirely present in their own bodies, no apology in the posture, no performance in it either, just the solid fact of someone who has learned, over a long time and through difficult education, that she is allowed to be where she is. She wore dark work pants, a fleece vest, and boots. Her hair was pulled back. She was carrying something Walter couldn't see what from the window, held in both hands in front of her, carefully, like something that required care. She stood on the sidewalk in front of his house and looked at it. Walter watched her. Something moved in him, not recognition exactly. Not yet. Something closer to the feeling of a word on the tip of your tongue, a shape without a name, a knowing that precedes the knowing. He went to the front door. He opened it. She looked up, and for a moment, just a moment, neither of them moved, because the 20 years were doing what 20 years do, which is rearrange a face into something that is both the same and not the same. Something that requires the mind to perform a translation it wasn't expecting to perform at 6:50 in the morning. Walter looked at her. He looked at what she was holding. A piece of paper, folded in a clear plastic sleeve, laminated, he realized. Old lamination, the edges yellowing slightly. And then his mind completed the translation. Not the face, the lamination. The specific, deliberate care of someone who had laminated a piece of paper because the paper mattered enough to protect. The list, Walter said. He said it before he could say her name, because the list arrived in his recognition before the face did. Before the 20 years resolved. Before anything. The list got there first. Naomi looked at him. "Hi, Walter," she said. Margaret Osai, from her porch at 412, watched Walter Briggs open his front door and stand there looking at the woman on the sidewalk. She watched the expression on his face. She was too far to hear anything. But she had known Walter for 22 years, and she could read him at distance, and she saw the expression change. Not dramatically, quietly, the way light changes in a room when a cloud moves. She watched him press one hand against the doorframe. She watched the woman hold up something small. She watched Walter Briggs, the man who had been carrying something heavy for months, who had smiled at her across the fence every Sunday, with the smile that had something behind it, who had kept those flower boxes going through everything as though they were a promise he was keeping to someone. She watched him put his hand over his face. And she understood, without knowing the story, the way neighbors sometimes understand things, that something was happening on Clement Street this Tuesday morning that was going to matter for a long time. She went inside and put on a pot of coffee. For everyone. It was going to be that kind of morning. Walter's kitchen. The same table, the same yellow walls, Diane's yellow, chosen over 3 weekends, which Walter had repainted exactly twice in 14 years, matching the color with a dedication that the paint store employees had come to recognize. The same door frame with the pencil marks. The same coffee machine, same chairs, the same everything, preserved with the specific faithfulness of a man who understands that some things should not be changed, because changing them would mean something he is not ready to accept. Naomi sat across from him. She put the laminated list on the table between them. Walter looked at it without touching it. His handwriting, 20-year-old handwriting, slightly different from how he wrote now, a little less settled. The hand of someone still becoming who they were going to be. The same essential character, precise, clear. The handwriting of someone who means what they write, but younger. The annotations in the margins in a slightly different pen. Ask for Marcus at the front desk. He's good people. The 211 number takes a few tries. Don't hang up. Don't hang up. He remembered writing that. Remembered thinking this girl is going to call, and it's going to ring out, and she's going to think nobody is there, and hang up. And he'd written, "Don't hang up." He put his finger on those 2 words. "I kept it," Naomi said. "I know you probably thought." She paused. "I don't know what you thought. You probably didn't think about it again after that night. Most people wouldn't." "I thought about it," Walter said. She looked at him. "Not often," he said honestly. "But sometimes, when the winter got cold, I'd think I hope she's all right." Naomi was quiet for a moment. "I was not all right for a while," she said. "After that shelter, there were 4 months that were very hard. I don't need to go through all of it. But I want you to know that the list was the thing. Not the money, not the coat, the list." She touched the plastic sleeve. "Because it meant you had thought about it. You had sat down, at some point before that night, and thought, what does someone in that doorway actually need? And you wrote it down. And you kept it in your car." She looked at him. "You kept it in your car, like you expected to need to give it to someone." Walter said nothing. "Had you given it to people before?" she said. A pause. "Twice," he said. "Before you, and after?" A longer pause. "A few times," he said. "Over the years." Naomi looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Why did you have the list in the first place?" Walter looked at the list. Then he looked at Naomi. He had not told this to many people. It was not a secret. He had no secrets. Truly, he was not built for them. It was just a part of his life that felt private in the way that difficult things feel private. Not shameful, but tender. The way a healed bone is tender even after it's strong again. I was 23, he said. Between things. It was a bad year. He looked at the table. Someone helped me. Gave me something similar. And when I got back on my feet, he paused. I made my own. In case. Naomi nodded slowly. In case, she repeated. In case someone needed it, Walter said simply. The kitchen was very quiet. Outside, the 50 trucks waited. Margaret's coffee was probably ready. Rosa was still in her car at the corner. Or maybe walking up by now. He thought he'd heard the porch step creak a minute ago. I built something, Naomi said. After, it took a long time, the 4 bad months, and then better months, and then years of building. But I built something. She looked at him. 50 companies, each one in a different trade. Plumbing, roofing, fac, electrical, landscaping, every trade that a house needs. I own them all. They operate independently, but they're coordinated. When there's a job that needs everything, they move together. She paused. I built them because I wanted to be able to fix things. Really fix them. Not one thing. Everything. Walter looked at her. How did you find me? He said. I've known where you were for 4 years, Naomi said. I hired someone to find you, not to intrude, just to know. To know you were all right. She paused. You were all right. You were here. You were working. Your daughter was in school. You were all right. Her voice moved through something. And then 14 months ago, the record started showing stress on the property. I watched. I kept hoping you'd find a way through it. She looked at him directly. You didn't find a way through it. Walter was very still. I know about the foreclosure, Naomi said. I know about the 11 days. I know about the extra jobs you've been working. She paused. I know about the flower boxes. I know they were your wife's. Walter's jaw tightened. I'm not here to embarrass you, Naomi said. I'm not here to make a point about what you did 20 years ago. I'm here because your house needs work, and work is what I have. She gestured toward the window, toward the street. I have 50 trucks, Walter, and the people in them are the best in Dayton at what they do. And I would like, if you will let me, to fix your house. She slid the list across the table to him. You kept it in your car, she said, in case someone needed it. She looked at him. I kept it in my pocket for 20 years, she said, for the same reason. Walter stood up. He walked to the window. He stood with his back to her and looked at the trucks on his street, 50 white trucks in the October morning, engines quiet, waiting. When he turned around, his face had the expression of a man in a battle with himself, which is the hardest kind of battle, because both sides know all the same things. No, he said. Naomi looked at him. I appreciate what you're doing, Walter said. I mean that completely. What you've built, what you came here to do, that is. He stopped. Found the right word, extraordinary. You are extraordinary. And what happened 20 years ago, his voice moved. I'm glad it helped. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're standing in my kitchen. He paused. But I cannot let you fix my house. Walter, let me finish. He said it gently. There's a thing that happens when someone helps you, he said. And it's a good thing. I know it's a good thing. I've been on both sides of it. But there's a version of it that takes something from the person being helped, that turns them into, he searched into the story, into the recipient, into the proof that the helper did something good. He looked at her. I don't want to be the proof. I've spent my whole life not being the proof. I've been the one with the list. And if I let you do this, I become what? Naomi said quietly. Human? The words sat in the room. Walter looked at her. You think accepting help makes you the recipient, Naomi said. You think it changes what you are. The man with the list becomes the man who needed help. She shook her head. Walter, you have been the man who needed help before. You were 23. Someone gave you a list. You didn't stop being you. That was different. How? He didn't answer, because there was no answer. Because it was not different. And he knew it was not different. And the only real difference was that he was 51 now, and he had been the strong one for so long that the category had fused with his identity in a way he hadn't noticed until this moment when someone was asking him to step out of it. He stood at the window. The trucks waited. The porch step had creaked 20 minutes ago. Rosa had been sitting on the porch steps this whole time she had come up from the car when she saw her father open the door, had gotten close enough to hear the conversation through the screen, and had sat on the top step in the October morning and listened. She had not come in. She had waited. She was her father's daughter, which meant she knew with the bone-deep knowledge of someone who has been raised by a particular person and has absorbed their rhythms and patterns and the specific emotional architecture of who they are. She knew that this was not the moment to come in. That coming in would make Walter defend his position to two people instead of one, and defending a position to two people makes it stronger, not weaker, because the defense becomes about the audience and not the argument. She waited until she heard the silence after Hal and the absence of his answer. Then she opened the door. Walter turned. Rosa stood in the doorway, her coat still on, the cold coming in with her, and looked at her father the way she had looked at him across those dumplings 3 days ago. Completely, without the buffer of pretending she didn't see what she saw. Rosa, Walter started. I found the letter, Dad, she said. He already knew this. She had told him on the phone, but she said it again here, in the kitchen, in front of Naomi, because it needed to be said in the room. I know, he said. 6 weeks, Rosa said. You knew for 6 weeks, and you didn't tell me. I was trying to. I know what you were trying to do, Rosa said. I know exactly what you were trying to do. You were trying to protect me. You were trying to carry it until you found a way through it. Because that is what you do. That is what you have always done, and I love you for it. I love you so much for it. Her voice held completely steady, which was an act of will he recognized, because he had taught it to her. And I need you to hear me when I tell you that you carrying this alone for 6 weeks, you almost losing this house without telling me, that hurt me. Dad, that hurt me in a way that I don't think you meant. Walter looked at his daughter. Not the house, Rosa said. Not the money. The alone part. The deciding for me part. The she stopped mom died in this house. You know that. You know what this house is. And you were going to let it go rather than let me be in it with you. Her voice moved through something now not breaking. Just honest. Just the full truth of it, without the management she'd been applying for 3 days. That's what it felt like, Dad. Like you were going to go through that alone, too. Walter put his hand on the table. Rosa crossed the kitchen and sat down across from Naomi. She looked at her once, nodded. The way of someone who understands there is a larger story here, and is filing it appropriately, and she looked back at her father. You have a list in your glove compartment, Rosa said. You've had it my whole life. I found it when I was 12, and asked you what it was, and you told me someone helped you once. So you help when you can, in case someone needs it. She paused. I need you to hear what you just told me when I was 12. Walter was very still. Someone helped you once, Rosa said. So you help when you can, in case. She looked at Naomi. She's the in case, Dad, Rosa said softly. She's your in case, coming back. And you are standing there telling her no because you're too proud to be someone else's in case. She looked at her father. I'm asking you not to do that. Not because of the house. Her voice for the first time. Just slightly, because I don't want you to be alone in it. I don't want you to carry things alone. I don't want you to be so committed to being the strong one that you forget that the strongest thing, the actual strongest thing, is letting people love you. The kitchen held that. All of it. The yellow walls and the pencil marks, and the list on the table, and the 50 trucks outside, and Rosa in her coat, and Walter with his hand on the table, and 22 years of a father and daughter building a life in the space where loss had been all of it, held by a kitchen in Dayton on a Tuesday in October. Walter looked at his daughter. He looked at the list. He looked at Naomi. He sat down. He put both hands flat on the table, the gesture of a man who has set something down, who is done carrying it in the standing position, who has decided that the table can hold it now. What needs the most work? He said. Naomi exhaled. Just once. Short. The exhale of 11 months of watching property records, and 4 years of knowing where he was, and 20 years of carrying a piece of laminated paper in her pocket. The roof, she said. The roof first. Then the foundation on the east side. The electrical panel is from 1987, and it needs replacing. The plumbing has a slow leak behind the kitchen wall that's been going long enough to have gotten into the drywall. She paused. We'll do the flower boxes last. I brought someone who does that specifically. She's very good. Walter looked at her. The flower boxes? He said. I know about Diane, Naomi said simply. I know they were hers. I brought the best person I have. She paused. They'll look the way they're supposed to look. I promise. Walter looked at the window, at the flower boxes, visible through the glass, past their season, holding on. He nodded once. The magnetic panels came off the trucks at 8:15. Margaret Osai, who had brought her coffee to the porch and was prepared to stay there indefinitely, watched them come off and saw the logos underneath 50 different company names, 50 different colors, 50 trades, and she stood up slowly from her chair. She went inside. She called 4 people. She came back out with her phone in her hand and said to no one and everyone, someone, start a group text. The whole block needs to see this. By 9 a.m., Clement Street had an informal organization system that it had not possessed at 6 a.m. Margaret ran the coffee. Dave from 408 set up folding tables on his front lawn. He owned 6 of them, which he'd never been able to explain to anyone's satisfaction, but which had never been more useful. The Okafor kids from 420, who were 11 and 13, served as a general courier service for tools and messages, and the sandwiches that appeared from somewhere around 11. The trucks worked in sequence. Not chaotically, it was immediately clear that this had been planned, that the sequence had been thought through by someone who understood how trades interact, how you don't drywall before the plumbing is done, and you don't do the plumbing before the water is off, and you don't take the electrical panel until you have a temporary feed running. The choreography of 50 trades working on one house was complex in the way that anything organized is complex, full of decisions made invisibly, problems solved before they became problems, the product of someone who had thought about it enough times that the thinking had become instinct. Naomi was everywhere. Not micromanaging her crews, knew their work and didn't need managing. She was present the way a conductor is present. Not playing any of the instruments but aware of all of them. The whole shape of the music in her head while each musician handled their own part. Walter watched for a while. Then he stopped watching and started helping. Nobody asked him to. Naomi didn't assign him anything. He simply, at some point around 9:30, picked up a tool and joined the crew working on the East Foundation. Because he was not a man who stood and watched when there was work to be done, and because the work was his house, and his hands knew his house better than anyone's, and because participating was the version of this he could live with. The crew chief on the foundation, a man named Pete, who was 50-something and had been pouring concrete for 30 years, looked at Walter when he joined them and said nothing except, "You know what you're doing?" "I've patched this foundation twice," Walter said. "I know where it moves in the cold." Pete nodded. "Then work that end," he said. "Tell me if it feels wrong." They worked. Rosa came and went. She had a nursing shift at 2 that she would not miss, because Walter would not have allowed it, and she had learned enough from him not to allow it herself. Before she left, she stood in the front yard for a moment and looked at the house, at the new shingles going up on the roof, at the electricians running conduit, at the crew in the kitchen who were into the drywall behind the wall where the slow leak had lived, and she felt something move in her chest that was complicated and good. She found Naomi by the truck. "Thank you," Rosa said. Naomi looked at her. "You're the one who got him to say yes." "He would have gotten there," Rosa said. Naomi looked at the house, at Walter on the East Foundation, working alongside Pete with the ease of someone whose hands know the work. "He almost didn't," she said. "He would have let it go before he asked anyone for anything." "I know," Rosa said. "Where does that come from?" Naomi asked, not rhetorically, with genuine curiosity. The curiosity of someone who has thought about Walter Briggs for 20 years and still finds him worth studying. Rosa thought about it. "Mom used to say he was made of the wrong material," she said. "Like most people are made of something that bends when life pushes it. Dad is made of something that holds, which is beautiful, mostly. But it doesn't," she paused, "it doesn't flex. It holds until it's about to break, and then someone has to come find the crack before he admits it's there." Naomi was quiet. She loved that about him, Rosa said, and she worried about it. She paused. "I do both." Naomi looked at the young woman beside her, 22 years old, her father's eyes, her mother's wisdom, nursing school and part-time shifts, and a life assembling itself around the model her father had provided. "He did well," Naomi said. "With you." Rosa almost smiled. "Don't tell him that. He'll find something to worry about." The flower boxes were done last, as promised. The woman Naomi had brought her name was Clara, 60-something, who ran a landscaping company that had once been mentioned in a regional magazine for the specific quality of its seasonal plantings, spent an hour on the flower boxes while everything else was finishing up around her. Walter watched from the porch. Clara did not consult him. She had brought what she brought, and she planted what she planted, with a deliberateness that suggested she knew something about what she was doing that went beyond horticulture. When she finished, she stepped back and looked at them, and then looked at Walter. "Your wife chose these boxes," Clara said. "She did," Walter said. "The configuration she used based on the wear patterns. The soil composition, she planted pansies in the front, taller things behind. She kept it that way every year?" "Every year," Walter said. "I kept it that way after." Clara nodded. She had planted accordingly. The boxes looked the way they had looked in the years when Diane was tending them, not new, not redesigned, not Clara's vision, Diane's vision, restored. Walter looked at them for a long time. "Thank you," he said finally. "They'll winter well," Clara said simply. "In the spring, start them early." She had good instincts. She packed her things and went to the truck. Walter sat on the porch. He sat there for a while. By 4 in the afternoon it was done. Not all of it. Some things take longer than one day, and Naomi had not pretended otherwise. The roof was done. The foundation was done. The electrical panel was replaced and running. The plumbing was repaired, and the drywall behind the kitchen wall was patched and drying. The flower boxes were planted. The trucks, one by one, moved out. Naomi was the last one on the street. She stood by her truck. Walter came off the porch and stood across from her in the driveway, and the afternoon light was the color of October in Ohio, gold and low, the kind of light that makes ordinary things look like they were painted. "I need to ask you something," Walter said. "Ask," He went to the truck. His truck, the old pickup in the driveway. The one he'd had for years. He opened the glove compartment. He reached in. He turned back to Naomi with a folded piece of paper in his hand. A list. Updated, his handwriting newer, same hand, same format, same annotations. Ask for Marcus. Don't hang up. The 211 number, try 3 times if you have to. Naomi looked at it. She looked at him. You still keep it, she said. In case, Walter said. She looked at the list in his hand. Then she reached into her jacket pocket. She produced the laminated one, the 20-year-old one. His handwriting from when he was 26, the one with the yellowing edges on the plastic. She put it in his other hand. Keep that one too, she said. I don't need it anymore. Walter looked at both lists, the old one and the new one. 20 years apart, same hand, same intention. He folded them both. He put them both in the glove compartment. He closed it. He looked at Naomi. Come back sometime, he said. For dinner. Rosa will come. We'll make something real. Naomi looked at the house, at the new roof, at the flower boxes, at the yellow walls visible through the front window, the light inside warm and full. I'll come back, she said. She got in her truck. Walter stood in his driveway and watched the last truck on Clement Street move away down the road. The street was quiet the way it is after something large has passed through, not empty, but resettled, returned to itself, but changed in some way that would take time to fully understand. Margaret Osai came out of her house. She walked over. She stood next to Walter and looked at his house. You want to tell me what that was? She said. Walter looked at the house, at the flower boxes, at the glove compartment of the truck, where 20 years lived in 2 folded pieces of paper. 20 years ago, he said, I kept a list in my car, in case someone needed it. Margaret waited. Someone needed it, Walter said. He went inside. There is a kind of goodness that does not announce itself. It doesn't arrive with a reason, or a plan, or an expectation of return. It arrives at midnight on Grierson Avenue, in a city coat handed to a girl in a red jacket in a doorway. It arrives in a handwritten list, annotated in the margins, organized by urgency, kept in a glove compartment in case. Walter Briggs had been carrying that list for decades. He had given it away 3 times, and the mathematics of that 3 people, and the people those people became, and the things those people did, and the lives that moved, because those lives moved, are mathematics that cannot be calculated. The variables are too many, and too human, and too far forward in time to see the full shape of. But, on one Tuesday morning in October, 50 trucks parked on Clement Street in Dayton, Ohio, and that is one number. That is one answer to the question of what a list in a glove compartment is worth. One winter night. One coat. $20. One piece of paper that said, "Don't hang up." And Naomi, who hadn't hung up, who had kept the list, who had built the 50 companies and driven them to Clement Street on a Tuesday in October, and sat in Walter's kitchen and put 20 years of laminated paper on his table. Naomi had known something that Walter had to be reminded of. That the man with the list is not immune to needing one. That strength and openness are not opposites. That the bravest thing a person who has spent their life helping others can do is let someone help them. The house stands. The flower boxes are planted. The glove compartment holds 2 lists now, in case.